Hey everybody, welcome to video 2 for this MIT App Inventor class. So for this week's lab, we're going to be focusing on math. Yes, math, everybody's favorite subject in school, or maybe it is, but obviously math is pretty important in computer science, so it's definitely a good idea to be able to do sort of math with computer science and with this MIT App Inventor. So I'm going to go over just a small, simple tutorial, which will go over how to read inputs and how to do some calculations. So we go over various calculations in MIT App Inventor, and also we'll go over variables. So variables are just a way to store data as a program runs, and of course we can use different sort of math functions on variables to compute various calculations. So let's go ahead and get started. So for the UI, or for the look of this app, will be very basic. Later in the video, when I cover the first official lab for us to work on, I'll sort of design or sort of do a walkthrough on a more complicated sort of design. But for this one, it was a very basic design. So this program is going to basically just read into numbers and do a series of different math calculations, store them into variables, and output the results to a label. So very basic, just to get us started with math. So let's go ahead and first create a few, well, I guess we're going to have a label, which will basically sort of tell the user what to do in the text box, what to write in the text box below. So I'm going to Alright, so for the design of this app, it'll be a very basic, simple design, but just to sort of allow us to sort of work with this tutorial. So all we're going to do in this tutorial is read into numbers and do a series of calculations and store results in the variables and so forth. So the first thing we'll have to do is we're going to have to create a few text boxes. So I'm just going to create two text boxes to read in input. So I'm going to sort of add this text box over here. I want to make the width max out the screen. So for the width, I go to the component or the properties here, sorry. I type in or click on fill parent. It's going to fill this out. And I think the font, I can make it a little larger. Let's try 20. And then for the hint, this kind of tells the user what to type over here. So of course you can add a label above this or next to this text box, which tells the user what to do. But a hint is a way to save some space on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and have the hint say enter a number, just so the user will be aware. It'll have that enter number text over here, but it'll be sort of in gray like that. But once we run the program, we'll see what that hint really does. Now I'm going to add another text box. Click and drag it over there. And once again, I'm going to make the width maxed out to the apparent. I'll make the font to be size 20 again. And the hint, once again, will just be enter a number. Alrighty, so we have that. And I'm going to now add a label to output the results into. So in this situation, we go ahead and find the label. It's right here. We're going to drag it right there just like that. And I'll have the font size also be 20 just to be consistent. And I'm going to have it where I want to max out the width. So I'm going to max out the screen's width. So I'm going to pick the width field to be fill parent. And then for the height, well, I don't want to fill the whole parent. I want to put a button at the very bottom. So I'm going to actually have it where I'm going to use up a certain percent of the screen. Let's go ahead and just see what, I'll try 50%. That's not bad. Let's try 60. We can try 65. So UI design is always just sort of trial and error until it sort of looks okay. So I think 65% is good. So it's going to be where our output will be. I'm not going to really, I guess I could. So I'm going to just set the text to be blank because I don't want to have anything there. Yeah, sure. Sounds blanked out. And then I'll put a button at the very bottom of this of the app. So I'm going to go ahead and find button, click and drag it right there, just like that. So far as we add elements or components into our screen, it sort of stacks them on top or stacks them from top to bottom like that. We actually can use different layouts to sort of make it look a little better, but we'll worry about that in our later in this video when we go over the actual lab for Saturday. So for the button, well, I'm going to max out the width to the screen, and I'm going to say width will be fill parent. So parent and button is screen 1, so we'll make the width the same width as the entire screen. And then for the height, well, I'm going to go ahead and max out whatever's left over on the screen. So I'm going to go to height, go to fill parent, and just kind of fill out the rest of the space. Okay, so the button is all there. And now I'm going to write some text, because I think text for button 1 is pretty, I guess this is already a pretty basic app. This is too basic though. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe just have this say compute. That'll make the font a little bit larger as well. So make it size 20. And of course you can, mess around with the background color and the text color. So you can of course be as creative as you want with this, but I'm just going to do a quick example. So there we are. That's going to be our look for this very simple app. Now we're going to go over how to create the functionality, create variables, and do a series of calculations with the numbers read in from the user. So before we go into actually sort of writing our program, I'm going to go to these two text boxes, and I'm going to click on the first text box. I'm going to select numbers only. So on the screen, when we actually have to enter content, it's going to show sort of the numbers screen. So it's not going to really have the character screen. So there's no point because we are going to read in numbers. So I'll first do that before we move on with our program. So now let's go to our blocks. So top right corner again, there's our blocks. We're going to click on that. And here's where we actually can, write all the code. So for this program, we're going to have basically one main sort of event, which is when we click on a button, we're going to run some code. But I'm going to go ahead and create a few variables here. So if you go to our blocks, look at the block here for variables. I'm going to initialize a few variables. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of have it right here. So this will be, I'm going to go ahead and right click, duplicate. Just create a couple of these. So let's just duplicate a few more. So I'm going to do a series of calculations. And I want to have variables which are going to store my values as I progress. So this will be for, I'm going to call this variable num1. This is going to be called, so it's short for number 1. Then I'll have num2. And then it's going to be, I guess, the sum of two numbers, which I'm going to sort of sum later on. Then I'm going to have diff for difference, so for subtraction. Then product, which will be for the product of these two numbers. Then we'll have, I'm going to duplicate this again. So I right clicked on the block, and then I selected duplicate. So for this one, it's going to be, I guess, quotient. So the quotient of two numbers. And I'll right click again, duplicate, and I'm going to have another variable called remainder for remainder sort of division. So I have several variables we declared. So these are going to be variables num1, num2, sum, diff. So we can store values into them, and we can refer to them later in our program as we actually do calculations. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of align these up here so it does look nice, because another important fact with programming in general, it's always good to have your code to look nice. That's very important to have presentable code. Not just because it looks nice, but it's also easier to see what's going on. If everything is all over the place, then you can't really fix if you have any problems. It's also hard to update your code if you do want to update for some reason. So it's always nice to have your code look nice, so it's very simple for you to be able to make modifications to your program. So we can see here, all my variables are defined right there, nice and organized so far. Now, when I create my variables, I want to assign them all to be 0 because initially they will have no values. So I'm going to go to math. sort of blocks, and then select this over here. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this a couple of times. So I just right click and then left click on duplicate. I'm going to, of course, again, make that clicking sound. So of course, this is going to set zeros, set zeros for all of our variables, which is what we want it to be so far. We're going to, of course, we're going to add values to it later on, but this is going to just initialize them to all be 0. So we created a set of variables that we're going to use in our calculations. So now we have our button, and we want to, when our button is clicked, we want to go ahead and do some work. So I'm going to go to my blocks again and find this button 1. I'm going to click on button 1, and we have this block here for when button 1.click. We want to do some work. So let's click and drag it over here. I'll put it to the side so it's a bit organized again. So we're going to write the functionality as to when the user is going to click on button 1. So what's going to happen is if you go back to our designer, we have these two input blocks, or input text boxes, sorry. So user will enter some values in here. You want to go ahead and pull those values from this view into our variables num1 and num2. Let's go ahead and see how we can actually do that. So we're going to basically go to our variables block again, and we're going to go to the set block. So you want to set our variable to something. So we have to first see, well, which variable do you want to set? Well, I'm going to go ahead and set num1. So I'm going to click on the arrow here and global num1. I want to set this to, well, whatever the user entered from the text box. So text box 1 I'm going to click on because this is going to be where the user will enter. So if we go back to the designer, the user will enter some value over here. We want to go ahead and pull that value and store it into this variable num1. Let's go ahead and do that first. So I'm going to go text box 1 dot text. Let's see, where is dot text? There it is. Right there. And I'll put this inside of our button click. So what's going to happen now is basically we're going to set this variable num1 with whatever it was written in that text box. And then same idea, we want to do another variable assignment. So we're going to say set global num2 to text box 2 dot text, which is right over here. Just like that. So we simply just basically read in these two values from the input, and we sort them into these two variables. So let's go ahead and simply run this program and output what's stored here, just so we can get an idea of what's going on. So now I'm going to go ahead and simply output what's in num1 and num2 to our label. So back to our designer, I actually had to make the button a little larger because some reason when I ran this in my emulator, this compute button was much smaller and it was not really visible at all. So I had to update this to, so I had to go ahead and actually modify the label sort of height to be only 50%, not 60%, just to make sure it would look okay. But anyway, I want to output the values over here. So to do this, well, I'm going to go ahead and go to label 1. And I'm going to set its text. I'm going to set it to text, and it's going to be just, I'm going to use this join, and I'm using another join again, so I'll go over what join means in a second. So I'm going to take the variable get num1, another variable get num2, and then for my text, it's going to, I'm also going to add this to it. So I'm going to add this /n. What that does is going to output a new line. So all I'm going to do right now is what this does is I'm going to set the text to some text. So right now, here's what I'm going to output to the screen. Let's go ahead and split this apart, essentially. So I want to output number 1, whatever is read there, and then a new line, and then output number 2. So to do this, we have to join these together. So we take number 1, and we join that with a new line, and then we join that with number 2. So it's going to add this into one big output essentially. So it's not going to add it like numerically. It just sort of adds those, how should I say, those messages up. So we're going to output this first, then output a new line, and then output number 2. We have to join them all together. We're going to output this to our text, or to our label. So outputs the first number, then a new line, and then our second number. So let's go ahead and try to run the emulator again. Let me go back here and go to connect emulator. Yeah, sometimes the emulator just crashes by itself for no reason. So let's see how long it takes to load this up. Yeah, I'll wait here until it loads. It should take about maybe another 30 or so seconds. Yeah, I think there it goes. So anyway, all we're going to do here is we're going to output this to the screen. So let's just, I guess I can just keep this video going. It's only another 10 more seconds left. You of course can sort of fast forward if you want right here. But I don't want to really stop the video recording right here. Okay, so now it should run pretty soon. Okay, there it goes. All right, so right here we see this enter a number. If you go to our view, we go back to our text box 1, we see this hint, enter a number, enter a number. Well, that's the hint that's going to be displayed right there. So it gives us an idea of what's supposed to be output here. And I'm going to just have it just 2, and here I'm going to say 4.15. So if my work is correct, if I hit this compute button, it'll output simply 2, then a new line, 4.15. Let's hope this actually works. And actually works. So there we go. So how does this actually work? Let's go back to our blocks, and I'll show the emulator here at the same time so we can kind of look at both of them at the same time. So here's what happened. When I clicked on the button, it took this 2 from text box 1 and it stored it into a variable global num1. So just really num1, but it's a global variable, but don't worry about that global word, just num1. We stored 2 into this variable num1. Then we store 4.15 into num2. And then I simply want to write to the text field, so set label1.text. I want to output this. Remember, I want to output the number 1, then a new line, then number 2. So number 1, which has a value 2, then new line outputs, and then number 2 right there. I have to join them because we're outputting using a label, so we have to sort of combine outputs together. So that's what happened over here. So now let's go ahead and go back to taking this apart, and now let's go ahead and do some calculations and sort of play around with this program. So now let's go ahead and just do a series of calculations and output all the calculations to the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of take this block out because we don't need this anymore, and sort of, why did it do that? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and dump this into the trash right there. So we're going to go ahead and start over again on this. But so far, we do have the number 1, number 2 ready from the user, so we can now use num1, num2 in our calculations. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our variables. I'm going to go ahead and do a set block. So I'm going to go ahead and say set global sum. So just a sum variable. So that global is just there, but don't worry about the global. Just focus on the word sum. So sum is going to be a placeholder. I want to store basically the sum of num1 plus num2. So to do this, we have to go to our math blocks. So click on math. There's several different calculations. I'll first pick the addition block. So I really want to just add num1 plus num2 and store that value into sum. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my variables and go to this get. I'm going to go ahead and also right click and duplicate this, all these 2 get. I'm going to get num1 and get num2. So I had to do is just a left click on this arrow to drop this down. I picked the variable I want to get. I'm going to go ahead and drop it in here and drop that in there. So basically it's going to take my first number, num1, plus num2, and it's going to add these up. And I want to take that result and assign it to the sum variable. And now we're going to have the sum of num1 plus num2 stored in the variable sum. Let's do some more math. See, the math part's not too bad on this example. So let's go ahead and just do some more math. So I'm going to go ahead and do a difference, so which will be a minus operation. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract num1 from num2 and store that into my diff variable. Okay, so I first have to set up this subtraction. So I have to get num1 and num2. How do I get them? Well, I go to the variables component here, click and drag get. I'm going to right click and then duplicate. So I have these two gets. I'm going to set which variable do I want to get. I want to get num1 again. So num1 and then num2. I'm going to assign put num2 here, num1 there. So now we're going to take number 1, subtract it, so take num2, subtract it from num1, so num1 minus num2. It's going to compute that difference. I want to store this into my variable diff. Well, I'm going to go take my variables and click this set to, so we have get and set. Get will retrieve the value, set is going to assign or store some value into a variable. So I'm going to take the set block, and I'm going to set diff, and I'm going to set it with that. I'm also going to put that in this because I want to have all these get computed inside of this button1.click. So of course you can pause the video and try this out yourself. So of course you want to do next, you want to do product, quotient, and remainder. But I'm going to go ahead and do them as well. But if you want to work these out yourself, you can pause the video here and continue. But I'm going to right now work these ones out as well. So product means num1 times num2. So I'm going to, again, go to my math. And this is the x, so x is multiplication. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply num1 by num2. So I'm going to basically get the math over here, variables. I'm going to get two variables, so drag it over here, right click and duplicate, so I don't have to go back to that again. I'm going to get number 1, get number 2. I'm going to multiply these numbers together. It's going to compute some value, and I have to, of course, assign it to my variable product. Well, it goes to my variables, set to, select, left click, select over here, product, and then take this puzzle and just put it there. So it's going to set the product with the result of num1 times num2. I'm going to put this into my button1.click because I want to make sure that I store this result over here. And now we have two more, so quotient and remainder. So quotient is when you go ahead and divide two numbers, and we're going to return the result of division. And then remainder is going to be, well, if you do a remainder division, you want to get the remainder value, but let's go ahead and set these up, and I'll discuss more about that. So for math, we're going to now do a division, which will be this sort of, this is a slash symbol like that would be division. I'm going to divide number 1 divided by number 2. So go to my variables. I want to retrieve those two. So really the variables, all we have to do is set them. And we have to, constantly, set and get them based on what we're trying to do. So really right now it's a very simple operation. We're just simply working with num1, num2. But I could, of course, use other, I could, of course, right here, for, let's say for the subtraction, I could use the sum value from before, but let's not really get too carried away. So I'm going to now take num1 and divide it by num2. That will give me my quotient result. I want to go ahead and store it into a variable. So I'm going to use the set block, select the quotient variable, and then tack this right there. So it's going to take take num1 divided by num2, compute that result, and store it into quotient variable. I'm going to go ahead and sort of tack this into my click event. The last one will be the remainder. So with the remainder, we have a special division operator for remainders. Let's go ahead and first retrieve that. So go to our math blocks again. So here is this block. That's a remainder block. So what remainder really does is, for example, if I take, let's say, 5 divided by 3. So the remainder of 5 divided by 3 is 2. Because if you know from division, if you take a number of 5 divided by 3, you get 1 for a quotient, but then you have a remainder of 2. So this remainder division computes the remainder of doing a division. So a remainder division does come up in CS in several instances, so it's good to kind of get an idea of how that looks like. So let's do mod division, or modulo division. So I'm going to select my variable to get. I'm going to go ahead and get these two variables again one last time. Num1, put that there, and select num2, put that there. This is going to return the remainder. If I take number 1 divided by number 2, this is going to compute the remainder of this division. I want to store this into my remainder variable. Tag this on over there, and just like that. So now we went ahead and we took our number 1, number 2, and did a series of calculations with them and stored them into our variables. So now I'm going to go ahead and just worry about now outputting them to the screen. Then I'll do a few more modifications to our blocks, and then we'll go into the into our week 2, our first official lab. So okay, so now let's go ahead and output these to the screen. So label 1 is going to be the label where we're going to output all of our numbers to. So I'm going to go ahead and grab label 1. I'm going to select the label 1 dot, let's see, where is it? Set label 1 dot text. So I want to sort of set this to some text, and we're going to output text to the screen, to the label. So I'm going to select this text sort of box. And remember from before, we're going to have to join these all together. If you want to output one long output, we want to output essentially several things here. I'm not going to go over too much. I want to output the sum, difference, product, quotient, and remainder. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this join, but I'm going to first output to the screen. I'm going to output the word sum, and then output the actual value of what's stored inside of sum. So maybe I'm going to go ahead and just not put the, actually I'll just have one join, then we'll do more examples. We'll output the rest in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and select text. I'm going to go ahead and just say sum equals. I want to actually output sum equals. I want this to output to the screen literally. Output sum equals. And then I'm going to append to this output. So sum and then actual value stored in the sum variable. I'm going to go ahead and get the variable, use the get sum like that. And then tag it in like this and drop it in just like that. So we're just going to do it just for the sum, but I'll do the rest in a second. I want to make sure this actually does work, or at least give you an idea of what's going on over here. So I'm going to, I think the emulator should be okay, so I have to run this emulator again. Okay, that's fine. Emulator. Let's see. It should take about maybe about 30 seconds or so. Hopefully it loads up, and it looks like it is loading, so we are making some progress. So all we're doing right here in this program is simply just outputting the value, the sum, and then the actual value here. And we're going to go ahead and add and join more outputs together. Now for the lab, you may not have to worry about actually joining outputs like this, but it's not a bad practice to get a little bit of the hang of doing this sort of operation. So let's go ahead and wait for this app to eventually load. Then we can test this out, then we'll do more testing on this. And it's coming in now, so it should be good. And it's There it is. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter some numbers. Let's say 5, and then I'll say 11. So the result should be 16 if I sum these up. Let's go ahead and hit compute. Let's tap on compute. Output sum equals 16. So the variable sum, because if you look at our code, we read in 5 into num1 and 11 into num2. And right here, we simply took num1, which was 5, plus num2, which is 11, gave us 16, and we stored that into this variable sum. Then we did the rest of these work. So all this code gets sort of executed from top to bottom. We're going to run the first line, the next line, and so forth. We get to the very bottom over here. So after we compute all these numbers, we simply take the text for label1.text. We're going to set it to be sum equals, and then the value stored in the variable sum. So that's what's happening. So everything runs from top to bottom in our code. We have these numbers, we have the sum, and we compute more stuff, and then we output to the screen. So now we can go ahead and maybe output some more. We want to output maybe the difference, the product, the quotient, and the remainder, just to practice with some more sort of input and output. Let's go ahead and work on that next. I'm going to close the emulator. I'll reload it, but I'll probably sort of cut the video and then run it once it's already loaded. But anyway, I have to do some more joining over here. So it's going to be a very long joining process because, okay, great. I know it canceled. So I'm going to have to do some more joining. We're going to take this and we're going to join it with, I want to output a new line basically. So I'm going to join it with this. Here's where it's a little bit confusing. So what this does is I'm going to first output, I'm going to join sum with get with the global variable. Then I'm going to tack that on. So maybe I'll split this apart. Maybe I'll take it apart for right now so make it a little bit easier to sort of see this. So what I'm trying to do is I'll just sort of maintain these two. This outputs sum equals and then the actual variable, the actual value of what's stored in sum, and then a new line. I'll put this join over here. Now I want to go ahead and output the difference equals. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a text. And I'm going to have it, I'm going to type in here, difference equals. And then I want to actually output the actual difference. So this variable diff contains the difference because I say right here, set global diff to num1 minus num2. It takes the subtraction, stores into the variable, so I can use this variable in other calculations, or I can output this. I'm going to output it right here. I'll go to variables, get global diff. And then I'm going to go ahead and join that with a new line. So I want to output a new line afterwards. So I want to output one line for each one of these. So all we're doing right now is first output sum equals and then the value stored in sum, then output difference equals and the value stored in difference. I think I could maybe copy this entire block. Oh, I can. Oh, that's nice. So now I'm going to go ahead in this block, I'm going to output product equals. Now I want to go ahead and output the actual value contained in that product, which will be product. Let me go ahead and let's see if I'm going to right click, duplicate. I'll move this down a little bit. I'm going to output the quotient next. Let's go ahead and I'm going to try to spell quotient correctly. Quotient. That's how I actually mentally read to myself to spell this word out. And then I'm going to output the quotient, and then the last one will be the remainder. And I'm going to go ahead and output the actual remainder. So each one of these outputs sum equals and a number, new line, difference equals, outputs the actual number stored in difference, new line. So we're just simply outputting the numbers computed. And we're going to have a little message we're going to output along with them. So output a message and then the actual number, then a new line. Now we have to tack all of these together. So here's where it gets really, really hectic. We have to join this with another join. So luckily for the lab you're going to be working on, you don't have to worry about all of this. But this is just a little tutorial. So we actually have to join all these together. So this is very confusing, but all we're doing here is outputting all these to the screen. So yeah, I should have thought beforehand. This is definitely a little bit hectic, but luckily, yeah, for the lab, you don't have to worry about doing all of this. The math part will be the more complicated part, not really the actual outputting. This outputs all of our stuff. So after we computed all of our numbers, I want to output that. Outputs our results at the very end. So let's go ahead and run the emulator to show the output. Then I'm going to go ahead and just do one small one modification to this, and then we'll go to our lab for the week. Alright, so our emulator is almost running. There it goes. Now, one thing I sort of changed just a second ago is for the output, I forgot to put product equals, quotient equals, remainder equals. So I had to put these here. So output's the actual equal sign, so it makes the output a bit more nicer. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to test this app out. So I'm going to try, I'm going to pick, let's say, 13, my first number. Other number, I'm going to try 4. Then hit compute and see what it does. And that's the output we get. So I guess I could have put an extra space on some of these, but it's okay. So we can see here sum is 17, difference is going to be 9, the product is 14 times 3 is 52, the quotient, so 13 divided by 4 is 3.25, and the remainder, if I take 13 divided by 4, I actually get a remainder of 1. So it looks like all these came out correctly. So all we had to do is take 13 and 4, store in these two numbers, then after we have these two numbers stored, we go ahead and compute these numbers right here, and we simply output all of them. So a very simple sort of work here with MIT App Inventor. So one last thing I'm going to do is sometimes when you write program code and want to compute divisions, you don't really want to get the quotient in decimal form. So sometimes you want to actually get the actual quotient, but just the numerical value. So I don't want to get 3.25, I want to get just 3 for some reason. There are moments where you do want to have the actual, you don't want to have the decimal value because it's not going to be helpful in whatever application you're working on, which for the actual lab we're going to do, this is definitely going to be the case. So I'm going to go to my code and modify this a little bit. So we have our quotient right over here. So unfortunately, this could output decimal value because, well, there's no guarantee that this will divide evenly. I'm going to go ahead and pull this block out and sort of modify this. So there's actually an operation in MIT App Inventor, or this is actually a math operation, which is going to be a floor operation, which floor means to get rid of all the decimals in the number and just preserve that whole number part. So you go to math, and let's go ahead and look through all this. A lot of cool functions here. Floor. I'm going to go ahead and select floor and tack it on. So what's going to do is we're going to first compute global num1 divided by global num2. And we get that result. I'm going to go ahead and tack it to the floor. What floor means is I'm going to take this result. It takes this result right here, this block, that division, and it's going to remove the decimal part of it, and then I'm going to take this whole entire thing and tack it on to that. So now it's going to give me the whole number value, and it will remove the decimal values. If, let's say, for some reason I want to do that, it will do exactly that. Let's see if the emulator didn't crash yet. Let's try to compute this again. So we see here we have 17, 9, 52, 3.25, and 1 for remainder. Let's see if the app, I think the emulator should have updated. Let's go ahead and try this out. And we see here now, after I made this change, it did compute 3.25, but the floor of 3.25 is going to remove that decimal component, and it will retrieve that number value, the numerical value only, and stores 3 into the quotient variable. So now we don't actually have decimal values. So if we don't want decimals, the floor is going to round down basically. So there are other ways we can round as well, but the floor is a very simple operation, so this will be usable for the lab. So this was my very simple tutorial on doing some input and calculations and output. So now I'm going to go ahead and sort of go over the lab for this week. So for this week's lab, this is going to be the program you want to write, which is going to look like this. Now, of course, I just sort of wrote this pretty quick. You could try to make it a little bit nicer than this. You can try to mess with this during the lab session on Saturday, and of course at the house as well. So basically this program, what it does is you go in to enter some dollar amount, and it computes how many quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies are needed to add up to that total. So let's go ahead and show the emulator. I'm going to actually run this program. So if I run this, I click on the text box. I'm going to enter a number, $1.43. I'll hit the change button, and it outputs that to the screen. So we have 5 quarters, 1 dime, 1 nickel, and 3 pennies will add up to $1.43. So we'll go over now as to how to create this UI. So I will start over again and from scratch make this UI so you can follow along with me. And then we'll go a little bit into the actual logic and the actual code to be able to compute these amounts. So taking this app, I'm going to now, in this video, demonstrate how to create this look so you can, of course, follow along and create this view. And of course, I'll give you some hints towards the end as how to construct or how to work on the actual math on this. So I would recommend to follow along and create this look, more or less, before Saturday's lab so you have a good starting point from there. But of course, if you don't, it's okay. Myself and my graders or TAs will help us, not graders, this is not a class like that, but our TAs will help us, help you guys if you have any issues constructing this. Let's go ahead. I'm going to create a new project. So project, start new project, and I'm going to call this maybe just change demo, I'll call it. So it's going to be a demo, I guess, in a sense. Okay, so it exists. Okay, so change demo 2. All right, so let's go ahead and sort of try to create this sort of app. So what this will look like is the very top part will have sort of, we're going to have to use different layouts to create this. So we have the layout layout, I guess, objects, if you want to call it that. And the whole idea is for going from our app, we had this setup where we had this top part over here, which would have the label and then the text field. Of course, you can make it where a label, or sorry, text box could just have a hint instead of having a label next to it, but I'll make a label next to it just to make it more complicated. And then this middle part here, remember it had the coins, the coin pictures on one column, and then it had the numbers on the other column, and the bottom it had to calculate. So we're gonna have to go ahead and use these layouts to create that look. So let's get started with that. So for the very top part, we had sort of the labels for enter change amount, and the text box, it was sort of side by side. So then a horizontal arrangement is what we're going to want to use. So let's go ahead and click horizontal arrangement and drag it over here. And I'm going to make it so it's going to take up the width of the screen. So I'm going to say width, I'll make this the fill parent. And then for the height, I might make it not so wide like that, so not so tall like that. So I'm going to say height. I'm going to flip a percentage of our screen. Let's try 20%, see what that gives us. Maybe it's a little too large. So let's try 10. Maybe 15 will work. Nah, that's too large. Fine, 12. Yeah, I'll go with that. So now we have this layout over here, and then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add our objects into this layout. So of course, remember we have this label and we have our text box. So let's go ahead and go into our left side over here, go to our user interface. I'm going to select label and drop it right over there. And I'm going to have it where the label, this is going to take up, I want the height of it to be the entire parent. So let's go to our height and say fill parent. Now filled up to here, because right now the screen is sort of the grandparent of label. So right now horizontal arrangement is the parent of label 1. So I go ahead and say fill parent, it's going to fill up to horizontal arrangement, which is a sub screen or subcomponent of the entire screen. So we fill it up just to this point. Okay, and I want to use up maybe half of this horizontal for this text. So the width, I want to make it half. So for the width of this, it's going to be, I'll set it to 50%, so it takes up half of this of that. So it goes halfway like that. I guess 50% is, maybe I'll make it, you know what, maybe I'll make it a little bit less, because I guess I want to have more space for the actual input part. So I'll say 40. Okay. Now for label, I'm going to have it, so I'm going to go to my properties and type in enter. Like I said, a $sign I'll put there as well. All right, so it does look okay, but I think maybe we can make the font a little larger. I think it can handle a bigger font than 14. Let's try 25. 25 is good. Let's try a bigger amount. Let's try 30. Let's see how much further we can go. 35. 35 looks pretty good. I think it's a big enough amount, big enough size. And now I'm going to go ahead and add our text box next to this. I'm going to click and drag text box and just drop it right into this horizontal arrangement. So now once again, I'm going to set the size of it. So the width, I'm going to make it 60% because we have 40 for the label. So 60 for the text box is only appropriate. And I'm going to sort of make it so the height, let's see, where's the height? I'm going to set it to fill parent. So of course, if I want to, let's say this is actually very large. Let's say this area is too big. Of course, I can adjust the horizontal arrangement to a smaller amount. And then since these guys here, so let's just play around with this for a second. So the nice thing about doing this is if I go ahead and adjust the height to a smaller percentage, let's say to 5, everything is going to move along with it, except the font is very big on this, unfortunately. But you can see a text box did sort of adjust its size with it. The label did too. The label's font is way too big. That's the reason why it sort of didn't work correctly. So I'm going to put it at 30. But anyway, I'll put it back to where it was. Maybe I'll make it just 10% instead of the way it was. So 10% is probably good. So if I adjust this, it's going to adjust everything else as well, which is kind of nice having these little sub components like this. And for the hint, I'll get rid of the hint actually. I think in the version I ran, it had the hint right there, but I'm going to go ahead and take the hint out because we do have a label right there that tells us what it's going to output. So there's no point putting a hint right here. Okay, so far we have this portion of our look. Let's go ahead and continue along with this. Okay, so let's go ahead now and focus on this middle area here. So before we even do that, I'm going to just set our text box. I'm going to sort of select numbers only for our text box property, just so that way I believe it's going to make it so then when the keyboard pops up on the phone, it's going to only allow you to enter numbers. I believe that's the purpose of it. I haven't been able to test this on my actual phone, just on an emulator, but that's what I believe it does. But let's say if this causes some problems, of course you can deselect this. So anyway, so we had this horizontal arrangement over here. So now we have to, again, well, I guess we're going to have another sort of an arrangement once more. So I have to essentially create a horizontal arrangement over here. And within it, I'm going to create these two vertical arrangements is what's going to happen right now. So let's go ahead and do that next. I'm going to create my layout. I'm going to just create another horizontal arrangement because I want to have elements in side-by-side kind of order. Just like here we have these are side-by-side, I have to sort of create this first column and second column side-by-side. So I'll kind of repeat what I mean as I create this. So once again, this horizontal arrangement is going to now be, we're going to set the width of it to be the fill parent. So the parent of this horizontal arrangement is going to be screen 1. So screen 1 has these two children components, horizontal arrangement 1 and horizontal arrangement 2. And within horizontal arrangement 1, we have these two subcomponents right there. So now let's go ahead and set the height of this not to be the entire screen, because I want to have some room at the bottom to have our button. So I'm going to actually set the height. Let's try, I don't know, let's try 50%. Let's see what this gives us. That's not bad. Maybe you can try 60. Maybe I'll try just 7. I'll be a little daring and try 70. Hopefully in the app it'll come out the same way. So we have this over here. And I'll put the button here later on, but I'm going to first focus on this part. So we have this horizontal arrangement where we're going to have, so horizontal arrangement allows us to create columns, essentially, is sort of the idea. So with the with this over here, we have these sort of, we have columns. So now I want to create a vertical arrangement within this. So vertical arrangement means I can sort of add sort of rows. I can create sort of sub elements. So let's go ahead and just do a vertical arrangement and see how this actually works. I'm going to drag and drop this over here. So I create a vertical arrangement within my horizontal arrangement too. So I want to have it where the coins will be on one arrangement, other side will have our numbers. So I'm going to have to basically set the length, or sorry, the width of this arrangement, which is going to be 50%. So half will be for the coin pictures and half will be for the numbers. And I'm going to go ahead and add another vertical arrangement and put it next to this one, and have this one also have the width of 50%. So we have these two columns. So we have a horizontal arrangement. The purpose is so we can assign, we can sort of add things side by side. And a vertical arrangement will allow us to add elements sort of in this column sort of format. I'm going to go ahead and set the heights for both of these to be fill parent. So what I did right here essentially is I create a horizontal arrangement which will allow us to have elements added side by side. But within each side by side, I want to have elements added sort of top to bottom. So I have to have this horizontal arrangement to create these two components. And then within the vertical arrangement, I can go ahead and add elements from top to bottom. So now we're going to go ahead and add the actual elements into these two different arrangements. So now I'm going to add these images into this program. So I went online and Googled a picture of a quarter, a nickel, a dime, and a penny. I sort of will declare right here in this video, I did not create these. I do not own these images. I simply just found them and used them for this app. So in order to add different images to our program, go to the very bottom of right over here in our screen, we have upload file, and we click on upload file to choose a file. So I'm going to go ahead and choose. I already have these files already here beforehand. So I'm going to go ahead and select, I guess, a quarter, hit open, and then OK, and it will add it to our project. And there it is. So that's our file. Let's go ahead and add the rest of them as well. So I'm going to go ahead now and try, I'm going to go ahead and add a dime. Then I'm going to add, I guess, nickel. And then we're going to go ahead and add our last one, which is good old honest Abe. Abraham Lincoln on the penny. And now we added these images into our project. So we have that part done. So now we have to go ahead and sort of add these into our arrangement. So we want to have the quarter, dime, nickel, and penny over here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my user interface and go to, let's see if I can find it here. Let's see, where is it? These are always kind of weird. I have to like dig through all these. Image picker, no. Maybe it's over here somewhere. It's supposed to be image, I believe. image, drawing animation, canvas, no. Oh, there it was. Image was right there the whole time. So it was right in front of me. Okay, so there is the image right there, user interface. I'm going to go ahead and click on image and drop it in there. I'm going to have actually 4 images. I'm going to go ahead and just sort of drop 4. And since we have this in this vertical arrangement, as we can see, it will stack them from top to bottom. Horizontal stacks them from left to right. So it's pretty neat. So we can do all kinds of arrangements within other arrangements to sort of stack elements nicely. So for this image right here, I'm going to basically sort of assign the first image. So it's going to be this, I think this one's going to be our quarter amounts. Of course, you want to label your file names with good names. This one's kind of terrible, but I kind of can remember which one was which. This one I think was quarter, that one I think was dime, nickel, and penny. So now we're going to go ahead and sort of go to our image, click on it, and then select our image. So picture, I'm going to pick the quarter, hit OK. And the actual quarter size is very big. So it took up so it's way beyond the size of the screen. So that's why it's all messed up. But we're going to fix this in a second. I'm going to click on scale picture to fit as well. Now we have to adjust the height of this image. So I'm going to go ahead and try maybe 10%, trying to shrink this image size a little bit because it's too big. So we see here now it's a little bit more manageable. I'm going to select 10 over here. Okay, so it comes out, but it doesn't look too nice. Let's go ahead and sort of maybe try 15%. And for the width, I'll try 15% or so as well. Maybe I make the width a little bit wider than 15. Maybe I'll try a 17. It looks okay. I think it looks decent. Of course, you can mess with this some more and try and make it look nicer, but this, I guess, looks okay for right now. Now let's go ahead and add the dime image here. So I'm going to click on this image object. I'm going to click on scale picture to fit. And I'm going to go to the picture component. I'm going to select the dime, which I think this one's a dime object, or picture, sorry. And the dime is very large, so we have to, of course, shrink it down. So I'm going to try, say, 15%, and then 15% for the width. It's not really to scale, but it does look okay. I'm going to try 10 because I kind of want maybe the quarter to be kind of large. We all know a dime is supposed to be pretty small compared to other coins. So, okay, yeah, it looks okay. So let's go ahead and now add the next two, so nickel and penny. So click on image 3, and I'm going to select the picture. It's going to be a nickel picture. And I'm going to do scale, I guess, just because. And then height, I'm going to go ahead and mess with the height because it's too large. It won't fit here. So I'm going to try maybe 15% for the height and 15% for the width. I think that actually looks okay. That's roughly to scale, more or less. Maybe actually make it a little bit smaller because I think quarter is supposed to be a little bigger. So I make this one maybe a little bit smaller so it's a bit nice. So it's a bit more to scale, I guess, is the key. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Now our last one will be our penny. So we go to image 4, we click on image 4 in our view. And I'm going to, again, scale picture to fit. And I'm going to select the picture, which will be our penny picture. And it just sort of puts it there, but it's way too big. So you have to shrink the image a little bit so we can fit it onto our app. I think that actually first time, I think that kind of came out well. So there we go. We have our, we have all of our quarters right there. So now we have to go ahead and add labels in this arrangement right here. So we can, of course, have sort of text side by side so it sort of matches or aligns up somewhat. So let's go ahead and now go to our label. I'm going to drag it and drop it in here. And I'll add a few more labels. As you can see here, it sort of stacks them because we have the vertical arrangement. And I'm going to I'm going to set the text to be 0 because initially we'll have all zeros. So let's go ahead and first set every text to be 0. just so it's consistent. So select label. I think I'll make the fonts a little bit bigger. So let me see. I believe these ones I set to size 30. Let's see if 30 does work. So I'm going to set the font to be 30. Yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. So I'm going to now set this one to 30 as well. And I'll set all of them to 30. So I think that looks good enough. There's probably better ways we can actually do this, but this is sort of the simplest way I could think of for this. So now I want to go ahead and maybe make these labels a bit taller. So that way they sort of will scoot down a little bit. So I'm going to go on this first label. I'm going to set the height to maybe I'm going to have it just maybe, let's say 20 pixels. That's too small. Okay, let's try 50. So it sort of moved everything down a little bit. I think 50 is a little too small still. Let's try 60. Okay, I think it looks okay. You know, I'll try maybe a little. Let me try 70. Okay, I think it looks about okay. It does sort of align decently with these coins. So I'm going to go ahead and select the height. I'm going to go ahead and set the pixels. I'm going to maybe just try maybe 50 pixels here. Okay, yeah, I think we can go with that. And then I'm going to click on this one and set the height for pixels. I'm going to try maybe, let's say, 20. And that was actually the opposite of what I wanted. So let's try 30. Let's try a little bit more so it kind of moves down a little further down so it somewhat aligns with the penny. So let's try 50. Well, that looks about okay. I think that works. I think I'm satisfied with that. So now we have to go ahead and add our button to the very bottom, and then we'll have the whole UI finally constructed. Let's go ahead and add the button. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag button and just put it right there at the bottom. So now we're going to go ahead. I'm going to make this button. I'm going to fill up the rest of the space over here. So I'm going to set the width to fill parent. And the parent of button actually is going to be screen 1. So it's going to fill up up to the entire screen. And then for the height, I'll also make it fill parent. Oops. The height, I'll make it also fill parent. So it takes up that space at the very end right there. And then of course, for text, I'm going to go ahead and I don't know what I said before. I think I called it change maybe. I'm not sure what I called it in the last app, but I'll just say change just in case. I think that's what it was. And of course, the font size, I'll make it a little larger. Let's try 30. Yeah, I think 30 works. So there we are. That's going to be our look for this program. So hopefully you're able to follow this and construct this look. So of course, just to remind you, I recommend you sort of at least attempt this and try to get this to look somewhat like this by the lab on Saturday. So that way we can go ahead and start working on the actual code and the blocks and all of that other good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead now and talk about how to actually sort of think about how we're going to sort of work the logic and the code out for this application. So before I go over some of the math stuff and actual functionality to this, I want to mention one thing first. So on my emulator, the look came out okay, but on my mobile phone, it came out a little bit. These zeros were not completely nicely arranged. So one alternate option you can think of. So if you don't do this, it's okay. We're not really too focused on the UI stuff just yet. We'll get more used to the UI and the look of your app as we progress. But one option would have been is to have one big vertical arrangement and add several horizontal arrangements. So each horizontal arrangement will have a picture of a quarter with a number. The next horizontal arrangement would have a dime and a number, and so forth. And then we have a nickel and then a label and penny and a label. So you could have one big vertical arrangement and then 4 horizontal arrangements, and each horizontal arrangement contains a sort of a coin and then a picture and then a label. So I guess I won't be able to cover that. So, but anyway, this will be good enough for right now, but that would have been a better way of actually constructing this. So, but this is going to be good enough just to kind of give us an idea, just to give us some idea. But of course you can try to rework the look a little bit for that. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just go with this for right now. I mean, I'm not the expert on UI design. I'm sort of more of a algorithms person and problem solver, whereas the look of any app is always never my strong point, but at least it does look somewhat okay. Let's go ahead and go to our blocks and try to understand what's going to happen here. So once again, I want to have a variable that's going to store the amount read in by the user. So the user is going to read in, let's say, types, let's say $1, I think $1.43 I used in the earlier example. So we want to have a variable created. I want to initialize a variable that's going to store that amount. I'm going to call this maybe just amount, I'll call it. That's going to be the variable name I'm going to create. And then I'm going to have it where it's going to have, I'm going to initialize it to 0 because I'm going to just set it to 0 just to be safe. And of course, we may have some more variables, different variables. So we have one that will store the amount of quarters, one that will store the amount of dimes, one that will store the amount of nickels, and one that will store the amount of pennies. So you create more additional variables as well over here. Then we have really one main sort of event we have to worry about. When the user clicks on the button, that's where we're going to do all that calculations. Let's go ahead and click on the button and find the click block, which is right there. And now we're going to have to write all of our code here. So first thing you want to do is you want to pull the number read from the user and you want to store it into the variable called amount. So the way we do this, just like before, I'm going to go to variables and then set. I'm going to select global amount to, we want to take the value read from text box 1. That's where the text box where the input is going to be stored. We're going to take text box 1 dot text like that. Now here's one thing we have to sort of think about. So let's go to the blackboard and sort of draw this out a little bit. So in this case, maybe I can also send you guys this as well. So let me go ahead and sort of call it change, sort of a change app, I'll call it. So I want to go ahead and be able to think about this. So we're going to have a variable called amount. And let's save the user. So it's going to be something from that text box, I believe. So we're going to take that text box. So text box 1 dot text. Now I'm going to put this in blue right below, which is going to sort of tell us what's potentially could be stored there. So let's say the user entered 1.43. That's how much they entered, right? So text box 1 dot text could contain any number. Let's just say the user entered 1.43, so that number is going to be stored in text box. So when we say text box 1 dot text, we're going to retrieve this number, $1.43. Okay, so I really want to store, actually 143 instead, because it makes it easier to actually work out this math. So I really want to, just like, for your math class, I want to sort of move the decimal over 2 places, is what I'm trying to do essentially. So what we have to do is take this amount and multiply it by 100, which is going to give us 143. And I want to store that into amount. So let's see, how do we actually do this using our code? So I probably may not write too much more over here, but we'll see. I might write some more hints here. I guess I could post this along with it, but it's in the video already, so I think that's good enough. But anyway, let's go ahead and do this. So yeah, it's kind of a sudden sort of flash right there. So anyway, so now we're going to have text box 1 dot text. I'm going to do some math on this. I'm going to go ahead and multiply this amount by 100. I'll take a math field again. I'm going to go ahead and type in 100 over there. I'm going to assign this right here. Oh, I used the wrong one. It's supposed to be multiplication. My mistake. Go ahead and sort of let's jump this. So we're going to take the multiplication. There we go. So take that amount from the user, multiply by 100, and store this into the variable global amount. So the very first thing we do in our click event is I want to just take that number the user entered, multiply it by 100 because I want to get it with that decimal point moved over 2 places. Okay, so let's go back to the blackboard and try to figure out, well, okay, how do we compute the quarter amount? Okay, so let's say we have a variable. I'm going to call it quarter. So obviously in our app inventor, in our blocks, we're going to create a variable. Just like we created amount, we're going to create a variable called quarter. Okay, so we have this variable amount. So amount is going to equal, in this particular instance, 143, because right above in our blocks, or in this is our notes, but this sort of mimics the blocks. It's going to have the number, because we took text box 1 multiplied by 100, we have 143 stored into the amount. So how many quarters are we going to have to actually use for 143? Well, a quarter has a 25-cent value, or we can think of it as 25, the number 25. So basically, what can we do to figure out how many quarters we're going to need? So I'll give you a bit of a hint. So not really a hint, this is sort of the solution almost in a way. So 143 is our amount. If I divide that by 25, well, the actual division will give us some decimal value, but I don't really want that decimal value. So what's going to happen is it's going to give us, well, let's see. So it is 4 quarters in a dollar plus 25. So it should give us, it's going to give us 5 point something. I'm not sure exactly what that something is off the top of my head, but it's going to be 5 point something, which means we're going to have to store, we need 5 quarters to actually to represent this number. So, okay, but I don't want to have that decimal part. So we have to do some operation on this number, 5 point something, in order to remove that decimal part. Then we store that amount into the quarter. And now we know how many quarters we have. We have to take that amount, so the number of quarters we have, which has a 25-cent value, we have to remove that amount from 143, and then use that amount, the new amount we have computed, to figure out the rest. So we have to basically remove that amount from so this quarter amount, which is going to be, let's say, 5 point something, but we want to get 5 essentially. So a 5 multiplied by 25 will give us 125. We remove that from 143, and the leftover remaining amount we have, well, from that we're going to now try to compute how many dimes we'll need from the leftover amount, and so on and so forth. And at the end, we have to go ahead and output the results into each respective label. So this is, I think in a sense, I kind of gave away some help here, but it's okay. So if in case, hopefully this gives you an idea of what you have to do. So that's it for this second video. So hopefully this video did help you out with the content for Lab 2. I look forward to seeing you on Saturday. So until then, take care and see you in class.